The doctor's voice trembles through the phone. There's a complication, and it's genetic. I feel the room tilt beneath my feet. The air thins. Alexander's hand tightens around mine before he snatches the phone. His knuckles turn white as he demands clarity. What kind of complication? A pause, then the sentence that splits the world in half. The condition can only come from the father. Silence crushes the room. Alexander slowly turns toward me. And in that moment, I realize something I have never told him could destroy everything. If the timeline is wrong, if one secret resurfaces, he might not be the only possible father. Before we go any further, if you're new here or you've been riding with this channel from the beginning, welcome. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. This channel tells stories that hit home, stories about love, power, betrayal, and impossible choices. If that's your kind of journey, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. The next morning, the hospital conference room feels colder than it should. Alexander stands instead of sitting. Control is his shield. The specialist projects genetic charts onto a screen. A rare marker, dominant, hereditary, linked to a specific bloodline cluster. Alexander orders a private lab to run independent testing. No delays, no leaks. He speaks in short, sharp commands. I watch him shift back into the man who negotiates billion-dollar acquisitions without blinking. Last night he was vulnerable. Today he is calculating. I sit there feeling like evidence. By afternoon, the media storm begins. An anonymous tip surfaces. Headlines question the pregnancy. Billionaire heir in doubt? Is best friend carrying a strategic child? Then she appears. His ex, perfectly styled, tearful on camera. She presents medical documents claiming she was pregnant months ago, claiming she lost the child under stress, claiming betrayal. Alexander's PR team scrambles. I stare at the screen and feel my stomach twist. She looks convincing. Too convincing. The hospital confirms the genetic marker again. It is real. It is paternal. Alexander's private lab begins immediate paternity testing. He doesn't ask if I'm okay. He doesn't mean to be distant, but fear makes him colder. I feel it. The warmth from his confession the night before evaporates. I trust you, he says, but he avoids my eyes when he says it, and that hurts more than doubt. I begin researching the genetic marker myself. It leads me somewhere unexpected. An old corporate scandal, a powerful dynasty, Alexander's estranged father, the man who disowned him years ago. The marker traces back through that bloodline, which means this isn't random. This condition is legacy. And the father who vanished from public life? He has just returned to the city after a decade abroad. I feel something tighten in my chest. This isn't just about us. Alexander refuses to talk about his father, but I see the cracks. He barely slept. He calls his legal counsel. He tightens security around the penthouse. He orders background checks on hospital staff. Control. Always control. But fear leaks through in small ways. When he thinks I'm asleep, I hear him whisper, "Not like this." I close my eyes and pretend I didn't. The ex escalates. She releases more documents, claims she was manipulated, claims Alexander promised her an heir first. Social media explodes. Speculation spreads. I step outside the building the next day and cameras flash in my face. Are you after his fortune? Is the baby even his? I freeze. For a second, I can't breathe. Then I remember who I am. I didn't ask for any of this, I say calmly. But inside, I'm shaking. That evening, the hospital calls again. Additional screening is required. The marker connects specifically to a restricted trust structure. The specialist hesitates before explaining. This isn't just medical, she says carefully. It's tied to inheritance. Alexander goes very still. Inheritance means his father, means control, means pressure. And suddenly the pregnancy feels less like love and more like leverage. I feel used, even though I don't know by whom. That evening, the hospital calls again. Additional screening is required. The marker connects specifically to a restricted trust structure. The specialist hesitates before explaining. This isn't just medical, she says carefully. It's tied to inheritance. Alexander goes very still. Inheritance means his father, means control, means pressure, and suddenly the pregnancy feels less like love and more like leverage. Late that night, Alexander finally says the name he avoids. His father, a cold strategist, a man who once called him weak, a man who demanded a successor before reinstating him into the family empire. I sit across from Alexander in the dim living room. Did he know about us? I ask. Alexander hesitates, and that hesitation feels louder than any answer. I look at him and something shifts inside me. For the first time, I wonder if I was chosen or selected, and that thought refuses to let me sleep. I feel used. Even though I don't know by whom, Alexander requests a private meeting. No assistants, no lawyers, just him and the man he hasn't faced in years. The boardroom sits at the top of the original family headquarters. Old money breathes in its walls. His father waits at the far end of the table. Perfect posture, perfect suit, no warmth. You finally did something useful, the older man says calmly. Alexander doesn't sit. This child isn't a transaction. His father's expression doesn't change. Yeah, right, everything is. I feel invisible in that room, even though I'm not there, because this conversation is shaping my future. Alexander returns home different, quieter, controlled in a way that feels dangerous. He tells me his father admitted the trust exists, a dormant structure worth billions, activated only when a biological grandchild carrying the verified genetic marker is born, not adopted, not surrogate, biological. And the marker, I ask? It confirms lineage beyond dispute. I stare at him. So this baby unlocks it. He nods once, and I feel like a vault. I ask the question that has been building inside me. Did he pressure you? Alexander exhales slowly. Years ago, after a failed acquisition, his father publicly humiliated him, called him soft, unfit, threatened to erase him from succession unless he proved strength. Strength meant producing an heir, a continuation. I told myself I didn't care, he says, but I did. His voice tightens. For a moment, I see the boy beneath the billionaire. The private lab results arrive. Alexander is the father. The confirmation lands heavy and solid. Relief should follow, but it doesn't, because beneath the paternity result is a flagged annotation. The genetic anomaly shows unusual stability, not random mutation, not inherited risk, engineered expression patterns. Alexander reads the line twice. Engineered? I whisper. The specialist on the secure call hesitates. I might suggest intervention. Intervention means someone altered something. Before this pregnancy, I remember something I buried years ago, college, final year. I volunteered for a fertility research study, paid well, minimal disclosure. It was sponsored by a biotech firm with impressive credentials. I signed forms, gave samples, never thought about it again, until now. I pull up archived emails. The sponsoring company, a subsidiary, owned by a holding corporation. That holding corporation traces back to Alexander's family. My hands go cold. Alexander calls the family's former legal advisor, a man forced into retirement after a quiet internal dispute. They meet in a discreet private office. The advisor doesn't waste time. Your father invested heavily in fertility optimization research. For what purpose? Alexander asks. To preserve desirable genetic combinations. Silence fills the room. He believed legacy should be engineered. The implication lands hard. When Alexander tells me, something fractures. You're saying I was matched? I ask. He shakes his head quickly. I didn't know, but I remember how he approached me. Careful, measured, persistent. We had history, we had friendship, but was there data behind it? Did you ever look into my background? I press. He hesitates for half a second too long, and that half second burns. Alexander launches his own investigation. Quietly, he accesses internal archives through an ally still inside the corporation. Encrypted documents surface. Payment transfers to the biotech subsidiary. Confidential selection metrics. Candidate profiles. One file is labeled with my initials. Time-stamped years before we reconnected romantically. Alexander stares at the screen in disbelief. He was manipulated too. The X resurfaces again, but this time something is off. Financial records link her to a consulting contract. signed months before she re-entered Alexander's life publicly. The paying entity? A shell company connected to his father's network. She wasn't just bitter. She was assigned. Her role was simple: create emotional instability, drive a wedge if attachment interfered with the objective. I feel anger rise sharp and clean. I was never the target. I was the asset. Alexander requests one final private meeting with his father. No security, no witnesses, just truth. In the boardroom, the older man doesn't deny it. You wanted an heir, he says evenly. I ensured you chose the correct vessel. The word hits like a slap. Vessel, not woman, not partner, not love. I feel the insult in my bones, even though I'm not in that room. Alexander's jaw tightens. For the first time, he says quietly, you don't control the outcome. He walks out. And this time, he doesn't look back. Alexander comes home with a decision already made. He removes his watch, places it on the marble counter. I'm stepping away from the dynasty trust, he says. Just like that. No build-up, no theatrics. I search his face for hesitation. There isn't any. If I stay tied to it, he controls us, he continues. I feel fear rise in my throat. Walking away from billions isn't symbolic. It's war. The announcement hits before sunrise, a formal statement released to every major financial outlet. Alexander Hale withdraws claim to the Hale Dynasty Trust. He cites ethical divergence and personal sovereignty. Markets react instantly. Stock dips. Board members panic. His father counters within hours. Emergency injunction filed. Asset access suspended. Credit lines frozen. Control reasserted through paperwork. Power doesn't yell. It signs documents. Security at the penthouse doubles. Not because of paparazzi, because of legal threat. His father files a preliminary petition, future custody evaluation, argument built on financial instability, claiming Alexander's withdrawal shows impaired judgment. My name sits in the filing, described as genetically relevant mother. I read that line twice. I am reduced to biology again. And this time, it's in court language. We meet with independent counsel, not family lawyers, not corporate associates, a specialist in high-conflict inheritance disputes. She listens carefully. Then she asks one question. Are you prepared for him to argue that the children belong to the dynasty? Children. Plural. The word hangs unnoticed. Alexander answers immediately. They belong to us. I stay quiet because I feel something unsettled inside me. Halfway through the week, I feel pressure low in my abdomen. Not pain, just heaviness. The doctor requests additional monitoring, precautionary, given stress levels. Alexander insists on private transport, on-site security, discretion. Before we continue, take 1 minute. If you're invested in this story, subscribe now, because what unfolds from here changes everything. The hospital conducts extended imaging, advanced scans, high resolution. The technician grows quiet, too quiet. She leaves to call the specialist. I feel the silence stretch. Alexander squeezes my hand. What is it? I ask. The specialist returns. There appears to be a secondary cardiac rhythm. My mind struggles to process. A second heartbeat. The room goes still. Twins. The word settles slowly. 2 heirs. 2 genetic confirmations. 2 activation triggers for the trust. Alexander's father doesn't know yet, but when he does, escalation is inevitable. I feel conflicting waves. Joy, fear, anger, because my children just became twice the leverage. I close my eyes and whisper to myself, they are not assets. That night, hospital administration contacts security. Someone attempted to access my digital records, high-level clearance codes, corporate tier, traceable to Hale Global's executive server grid. Alexander doesn't need confirmation. He knows who would authorize that. His father isn't waiting for birth. He is preparing acquisition. This isn't about family. It's about ownership. Alexander arranges a final confrontation, not in the boardroom, in the old estate library, where he grew up, where lessons were taught without affection. His father stands by the fireplace, unmoved. You're risking generational stability, the older man states. You're attempting to claim my children before they're born, Alexander replies. They secure the future. They are the future. Silence cracks between them. The patriarch finally says what he believes. Legacy requires structure. Emotion weakens succession. Alexander steps closer. For once, you're wrong. He doesn't shout. He doesn't threaten. He withdraws something more powerful. He revokes cooperative access to every independent venture he built outside the dynasty. Technology holdings, international partnerships, private equity networks. His father's influence just lost strategic leverage. Power shifts, subtly, but decisively. The retaliation begins quietly. 3 of Alexander's external partners withdraw from pending ventures within 48 hours. A European fund suspends negotiations. An Asian tech consortium delays a merger vote. No public explanation, just silence. His father is applying pressure through influence instead of law. Alexander studies the reports without visible reaction. But I see the calculation in his eyes. He expected resistance. He did not expect coordinated isolation. For the first time, I understand how deep the dynasty's roots extend. This is not a family dispute. It is a systemic network closing ranks. Our attorney calls an emergency meeting. The custody petition has been amended. Now it cites risk of medical exploitation due to engineered genetic enhancement. They are reframing the research as instability, suggesting I was a participant in unauthorized modification. I feel heat rush to my face. They're implying I'm unfit, I say. The attorney nods carefully. It's positioning. Alexander's jaw tightens. This stops now. But stopping a dynasty requires more than anger. I make a decision without asking permission. I schedule a press conference. Not defensive, not reactive. Strategic. If they want to frame me as engineered, I will own the narrative. Alexander resists at first. Exposure creates vulnerability. But silence creates assumption. I won't hide like a lab result, I tell him. He studies me for a long moment. Then he nods. For the first time, I feel like we are aligned. The press conference is controlled. Limited outlets, verified journalists. I stand at the podium with steady hands. Yes, I participated in a college fertility study, I state clearly. No, I was not informed of any genetic manipulation. I pause deliberately. My children are not property tied to an inheritance trigger. Questions fire rapidly. I answer without emotion, because emotion is what they expect. When it ends, public sentiment shifts, not dramatically, but enough. The patriarch responds with silence. No counterstatement, no rebuttal, which is worse. Silence means recalculation. 2 days later, an unexpected ally reaches out. The former legal advisor. He has secured internal documentation proving deliberate embryo data manipulation across multiple candidates, including me. It's enough to trigger regulatory inquiry, he says quietly. Alexander understands immediately. This could dismantle the research division entirely, but it would also expose the family publicly. We review the documents together. Transaction codes, internal memos. Language referring to optimized lineage sequencing. My profile categorized under compatibility index. Not by name, by number. I feel anger crystallize into clarity. I was never random, but neither was Alexander. He was raised inside the system, conditioned to believe succession equaled worth. I won't let them reduce us again, I say quietly. He reaches for my hand. This time there is no hesitation. Regulatory authorities receive the files anonymously, not from us, from the advisor. Within days, inquiries begin. Financial compliance teams request records. Biotech oversight boards issue statements. The dynasty's research arm faces suspension. For the first time, the patriarch is defending rather than directing. Power is shifting in public view. Alexander watches the coverage without satisfaction. This isn't victory, he says. It's correction. I nod. Because this was never about revenge, it was about autonomy. The custody petition is quietly revised. Language softened, emergency claims withdrawn. The court schedules mediation instead of immediate action. It's not surrender, but it's retreat. Alexander's father sends a single message through counsel. Negotiation is available. I feel something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger, leverage. Mediation takes place in a neutral, private chamber. No press, no board members, just legal teams and family. The patriarch sits across from us, older, still controlled, but no longer untouchable. Alexander speaks first. There will be no trust activation tied to my children. The patriarch studies him. And succession will not be engineered. Silence stretches. Then the older man inclines his head slightly. Not agreement, acknowledgement. Terms begin to form. Weeks later, the legal restructuring is finalized. The dynasty trust is amended. No automatic activation clause tied to genetic markers. No custody leverage through inheritance triggers. The research subsidiary is dissolved. Publicly labeled as strategic refocus. Privately dismantled. At home, I sit by the window with Alexander's hand over mine. The twins move gently beneath my ribs. For the first time since that phone call, the air feels steady. Sakrana, this began with a trembling voice in a question of paternity. It ends with something simpler. Choice. If you've been with us through every turn, subscribe now. Like this video. Comment your thoughts. Stay connected, because some legacies are inherited and some are rewritten.